Somewhere in the woods behind a quiet neighborhood in New England, an animal is standing in the tree line watching the houses. It is the size of a small wolf. It weighs perhaps 50 pounds. It hunts deer in coordinated packs, it dens a few hundred yards from back porches, and it is not afraid of the sound of a car or the smell of a person. According to the field guides your grandparents used, this animal does not exist. The book said the coyote was a small, shy western scavenger, a desert animal of the open plains, weighing maybe 25 or 30 pounds that ate mice and rabbits and kept far away from people. And the wolf, the true apex predator of the eastern forests, was gone, wiped out of the northeast more than a century ago, hunted and trapped and poisoned until the last one was dead and the woods fell silent. But the woods did not stay silent. Something moved back in to take the throne. And it was not the wolf returning, and it was not the coyote as anyone knew it. It was something new, an animal that had not existed on this continent before, that assembled itself in real time out of the pieces of 3 different species, and then quietly spread across the entire eastern half of the country, while almost nobody noticed what they were looking at. Scientists are still arguing about what to call it. Some call it the eastern coyote, some call it the Coywolf, and some of them will tell you plainly that we are watching evolution happen right now, right behind our houses, faster than the textbook said it was supposed to be able to. This is the story of how the empty woods got a new ruler, where it came from, and why the people who study it cannot agree on what it is or where it is going. If this is the kind of thing that keeps your mind turning after dark, subscribe now. It takes 2 seconds. And tell me one thing in the comments. Have you ever seen a coyote where you live, and did it look bigger than it was supposed to be? I want to hear it. Now let us go back to the beginning, to the silence. To understand the animal in the tree line, you have to start with an absence, with the hole it came to fill. For thousands of years, the forests of the eastern United States had a clear ruler, the wolf. Gray wolves and the smaller eastern wolves moved through the woods from Maine down through the Appalachians and across the Great Lakes, hunting deer shaping the whole ecosystem beneath them. Everything in those forests had evolved alongside the wolf. The deer moved the way they moved because of the wolf. The smaller predators kept to the edges because of the wolf. The entire system was built around a single large predator at the top. And then the Europeans arrived, and they hated the wolf with a completeness that is hard to describe now. The wolf was vermin, a threat to livestock, a thing to be exterminated on sight. There were bounties, there was poison, there were organized hunts. Across a couple of centuries, the settlers waged a war of total elimination against the wolf across the entire eastern United States, and they won it. By the early 1900s, the wolf was functionally gone from the Northeast, erased. The forest that had been ruled by a large predator for tens of thousands of years suddenly had no large predator at all. And here is the thing about a system like that. When you remove the animal at the very top, you do not just create a quieter forest, you create a vacancy, an enormous ecosystem-sized job opening. All that prey, all those deer with nothing hunting them, all that space, all that opportunity sitting empty. Nature does not tend to leave a job like that unfilled for long. Something was going to move into that space. The only question was what? And the answer came from an unexpected direction. Not from the north, where a few wolves still clung on in Canada. From the west, far out on the plains and deserts of western North America, lived the coyote, the wolf's smaller cousin. And the coyote was, and is, one of the most adaptable animals on the continent. Where the wolf needed wilderness and large prey and was easy to exterminate because it needed so much space, the coyote could live on almost anything, almost anywhere, in small territories, slipping around the edges of human activity. When settlers tried to wipe out coyotes the same way they wiped out wolves, it did not work. The harder people pushed on coyotes, the more they spread, because killing coyotes just opened up territory for more coyotes to move into and breed faster. So as the wolf was being erased from the east, the coyote began moving out of the west, expanding its range in every direction, pushing into the enormous predator-shaped hole that the wolf had left behind. But a plains coyote is a small animal, 25 or 30 pounds, built for hunting mice and rabbits in open country. It was not built to be the apex predator of a northeastern deer forest. It was too small for the job that was waiting. And this is where the story turns, where it stops being about a simple range expansion and becomes something far stranger. Because on the way east, the coyote did not travel through empty land. It traveled through Canada, And in Canada, in the country around the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River, there were still wolves. If you are still with me here, you are exactly the kind of person who wants to understand how this actually happened at the genetic level. So take 2 seconds to subscribe, because this next part is the heart of the whole story, the moment a new animal was born. Here is what the genetics tell us, and it has been studied deeply, with researchers sequencing the DNA of hundreds of these animals and measuring hundreds of their skulls. As the western coyotes pushed north and east through the Great Lakes region and southern Ontario in the early 20th century, they met the eastern wolves that still survived there. Normally, these two species keep to themselves. But the eastern wolves were in trouble too, their own numbers driven down by the same persecution, and when a species gets rare enough, it can become hard to find a mate of your own kind. So they interbred, desperate, scattered eastern wolves, unable to find enough wolf partners, mated with the incoming coyotes. And the offspring of those pairings were something genuinely new, an animal carrying the genes of both. The first of these hybrids are thought to have appeared around 1919 in Ontario. And the timing could not have been more perfect, because just as this new, larger wolf-infused coyote was being created in the north, that enormous empty predator niche was sitting wide open to the south in New England and New York and the whole Northeast, just waiting. The genetics of the animal that resulted are remarkable. When researchers analyzed the DNA of eastern coyotes, they did not find a simple 50-50 wolf-coyote split. They found a mosaic of 3 different species. A typical northeastern coyote today is roughly 60% western coyote, with the remainder split between wolf, both eastern wolf and gray wolf, and even a measurable amount of domestic dog picked up somewhere along the way. One major study put the average at around 64% coyote, a quarter wolf, and roughly 10% dog. This is an animal assembled from 3 canines, a living blend that did not exist anywhere on Earth 110 years ago. And here's why that mattered so much and why it happened so fast. That splash of wolf DNA did something specific and important. It made the animal bigger. The eastern coyote is significantly larger than its western parent. Where a western coyote might weigh 25 to 30 pounds, eastern coyotes commonly reach 35 to 40 pounds for females and 45 to 55 pounds for males, with the wolf genes giving them not just more weight but longer legs, a broader skull, and a substantially larger jaw. Occasionally they get much bigger. There are documented individuals in the 60 and 70 pound range, and in one case in Newfoundland, a male was recorded at 82 pounds. That is not a scrappy little desert scavenger. That is an animal approaching the size of a small wolf. And the size changed everything about what the animal could do. A 30-pound coyote hunts mice, rabbits, and the occasional fawn. A 50-pound eastern coyote with wolf genes and a wolf's larger jaw can hunt something much bigger. It can hunt deer. And the Northeast, after a century with no major predator, was absolutely overflowing with deer. This is the piece that makes the whole story click into place. The new animal did not just happen to be bigger. Its size was the exact key that fit the exact lock the vanished wolf had left behind. Research on these eastern hybrids found that up to a third of their diet can be deer, a far higher proportion than anything seen in western coyotes. The wolf genes gave the coyote the body of a deer hunter, precisely when and where an empty forest full of deer needed a deer hunter. It was as if the ecosystem had placed an order, and hybridization had filled it. And once that animal existed, it moved. This is the part that shows just how successful this new blend really was. Researchers studying the spread found that the eastern coyote colonized new territory in 2 different fronts, and the difference between them proves the point. There was a northern front, the wolf hybridized animals, the ones carrying that adaptive wolf DNA, spreading down out of the northeast. And there was a southern front, non-hybrid coyotes coming across through the Ohio region without the wolf genes. And the northern wolf-infused front spread roughly 5 times faster than the southern one. 5 times. The animals with the wolf DNA did not just survive better. They conquered ground at a dramatically faster rate because they were better equipped for the eastern forest than plain coyotes were. They poured across the Northeast, New England, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, up into Quebec and Ontario, filling the entire region in a matter of decades. And they did something the original wolf never did. They walked straight into the suburbs. Because mixed into that genome, alongside the coyote's adaptability and the wolf's size, was that small percentage of domestic dog, and more importantly, a temperament that was comfortable near people. Unlike the wolf, which needed deep wilderness and fled from humans, this new animal was perfectly content to den behind a strip mall, to hunt a golf course at dawn, to raise pups in the wooded lot behind a subdivision. It took the wolf's job and then took territory the wolf never could, the human landscape itself. Today, these animals are everywhere in the East. If you live anywhere in the northeastern United States or eastern Canada and you have seen a coyote, you have almost certainly seen one of these hybrids. The animal in nearly every backyard trail camera photo from Maine to Virginia is not a western coyote and is not a wolf. It is this new thing, the one that did not exist when your grandparents were born. And there is one more piece of the spread worth understanding, because it reveals what this animal actually is. As the eastern coyote conquered the northeast and pushed outward in every direction, it eventually ran up against the coyotes coming the other way, the plain, non-hybrid western animals, expanding east through the Ohio Valley and up from the south. The two fronts met, roughly, in the country around western New York and Pennsylvania, and they began to blend into each other so that an animal in Virginia today is often a hybrid of a hybrid part northeastern coyote wolf, part southern non-hybrid coyote, part dog, the proportions shifting mile by mile as you travel across the map. There is no clean line, no border where one kind stops and another begins. There is a gradient, a smear of mixed ancestry laid across the entire eastern half of the continent. Every local population a slightly different recipe of the same three animals. In the Northeast, the blend runs heavy on wolf. In Virginia, the animals carry more dog than wolf. And down in the deep South, the coyotes have just a dash of each mixed in, almost the plain Western animal again. And that gradient tells you something important about what this animal is. It is not a fixed, uniform new species stamped out identically from Maine to Georgia. It is a shifting cloud of genetic combinations, wolf-heavy in the north where it met the wolves, dog-tinged in some suburban pockets, nearly pure coyote in the deep south, every version shaped by exactly which animals happen to be available to breed with in that particular place at that particular time. The eastern coyote is less a single new creature than a whole spectrum of them, all descended from the same improvised event, all still sorting themselves out. There is also the question of what this new predator is doing to the forests it has taken over, and the answer surprises people who assume a new deer-hunting predator in the backyard must be bad news. In the East, these animals have quietly stepped into the ecological role the wolf left vacant, and that role turns out to matter. By preying on deer, whose numbers had exploded in the century with no major predator, the eastern coyote helps check a population that, left unchecked, strips the forest understory bare and spreads disease. By suppressing smaller predators like foxes and raccoons and outcompeting them, it can indirectly benefit the ground-nesting birds and small animals those mid-sized hunters prey on most heavily. An ecosystem that had been missing its apex predator for 100 years suddenly had one again, not the one it lost, but a functional replacement doing much of the same work. Whether by accident or not, the hole the wolf left is being partially filled, and the forest is measurably different for it. We are past the halfway point of this story, and if you have made it this far, you clearly want the honest, complicated truth of it. So subscribe if you have not, because here is where the scientists start to disagree, and the disagreement is the most interesting part. You have probably noticed I have been using two different names, Eastern Coyote and Coywolf, and which name a scientist uses tells you which side of a real and ongoing argument they are on. One camp, led by researchers like Jonathan Way, argues that this animal is different enough to deserve its own identity. Their case is that it is measurably distinct from both parent species in body size and skull shape, that its genetics are a stable, consistent, recognizable blend, and that it fills a unique ecological role that neither a pure coyote nor a pure wolf fills. They argue it should be recognized as its own thing, and they favor the name Coywolf to honor the two species that built it. The other camp, which includes prominent biologists like Roland Kayes, pushes back hard, and their argument is just as compelling. They point out that the word Coywolf is misleading because it implies a clean 50-50 wolf-coyote split, and that is not what the DNA shows. The animal is mostly coyote with a minority of wolf and dog mixed in, and the exact proportions vary enormously depending on where you look. A true Coywolf, 50% of each, does not really exist in the wild, and crucially, they argue the animal is not a finished, stable new species at all, but a population that is still actively changing, still evolving, its genetics still in flux. To them, calling it a Coywolf freezes into a fixed identity, something that is still a moving target. And notice what both sides are actually agreeing on underneath the argument about the name. Both sides agree this is a hybrid animal born from the mixing of 3 species. Both sides agree it is bigger than a western coyote because of wolf genes. Both sides agree it took over the East with astonishing speed. And both sides agree on the most unsettling part of all, that this happened fast. One of the lead researchers describes hybridization as an evolutionary mechanism that can generate new variation and adaptation far faster than ordinary genetic mutation. In other words, this animal did not take millions of years to appear. It took decades. We did not read about this in the fossil record. It happened inside a single human lifetime in our own backyards, while the field guides still described the old animal that no longer matched what was in the woods. That is genuinely rare and genuinely important. We almost never get to watch a large mammal reshape itself in real time. Evolution is supposed to be too slow to see, a process measured against geological time, invisible within any human life. But the eastern coyote is a case where the process ran fast enough, and recently enough, and close enough to us, that scientists have been able to document it as it happens. Tracing the DNA, measuring the skulls getting bigger front by front, watching a new predator assemble itself and take a continent's eastern half. Which brings us finally to the question nobody can answer. Where does it go from here? Because if this animal is still evolving, as many of the scientists insist it is, then what we are looking at now is not the final form. It is a snapshot of something in motion. And that opens up genuinely open questions that the researchers themselves cannot resolve. Will it keep getting bigger? The logic is there. In parts of the East, these coyotes have access to abundant deer, and the bigger individuals are better at hunting them, which should, over generations, keep pushing the average size upward. Some researchers think a modest continued increase is plausible. Others think the animal has found its equilibrium, big enough to hunt deer but small enough to breed quickly and live alongside humans, and that it will hold roughly where it is. Will it keep absorbing wolf genes? As real wolves slowly recover in a few parts of their old range, and as these hybrids continue to expand, there are places where they may meet again and mix again, potentially pulling even more wolf DNA into the eastern population. Or the reverse could happen, with the hybrids swamping the last remnant wolf populations genetically, effectively dissolving the pure wolves into the hybrid swarm. And the deepest question of all, is this what a new species actually looks like while it is being born? Not a clean event, not a single dramatic mutation, but a messy, fast, opportunistic blending of whatever genetic material was available, shaped by a suddenly empty niche, spreading and stabilizing over a few decades into something that breeds true and lives differently from anything before it. If the Coywolf camp is right, we may be witnessing the early chapters of a genuine new species, an animal that in 10,000 years will be as distinct as any wolf or coyote, and we happen to be alive at the exact moment it is forming. The scientific models, honestly, are struggling to keep up. This is an animal that broke the categories the models were built on, that crossed the lines the textbooks drew between species, that evolved faster than the frameworks predicted, and that is now living in an environment, the human suburb, that has no precedent in its evolutionary history. Predicting where it goes means predicting how a brand new, still changing animal will interact with a brand new, still changing landscape. That is a very hard thing to forecast, and the researchers are honest about it. There is also, honestly, the question people always ask, which is whether this bigger, bolder, deer-hunting predator living behind the subdivision is dangerous to us. And the honest answer is a careful one. These animals are large, they are unafraid of human landscapes, and they are capable of taking down a deer, which means they are capable of taking a pet. And cats and small dogs left out at night in coyote country genuinely do disappear. But attacks on people are extraordinarily rare. Across the entire modern history of the eastern coyote, spread across millions of animals and millions of people sharing the same suburbs for decades, there has been only one documented fatal attack on a human. One. Statistically, the animal in the tree line is far less of a threat to you than the drive to work, and it wants nothing to do with you. The danger it poses is mostly to the deer and to the outdoor cat, not to the person on the porch. What makes it unsettling is not that it is dangerous, it is that it is comfortable. The wolf, for all its power, kept its distance, needed wilderness, fled from us, stayed in the story where we expected it. This animal moved into the story we thought was ours. It hunts the golf course and dens behind the shopping center and raises its young within earshot of the highway. And it does all of it while remaining almost invisible, active at dawn and dusk and through the night, seen mostly as a pair of eyes in the headlights or a chorus of howls that sounds much too close. It is not stalking the neighborhood. It simply lives there alongside us in a landscape we built and assumed we controlled. But here is what we can say for certain, and it is the thread that runs through this entire story. We spent centuries removing the wolf, believing we were making the eastern forests safer, emptier, more ours. We were certain the apex predator of the East was gone for good, a chapter closed, and nature's response was not to leave the throne empty. It was to build a new king out of the parts that were left, quietly, quickly in the gap we had made, and to send it not just back into the wilderness, but straight into the neighborhoods we built where the wilderness used to be. We did not stop seeing this animal because it hid. We failed to see it because we were looking at the wrong picture, the one in the old books, the small shy scavenger that no longer exists in the East. The real animal is in the tree line right now, bigger than it should be, watching the lights come on in the houses, entirely at home in a world we thought we had cleared of predators. The wolf we erased did not come back. Something we never expected took its place, and it is still becoming whatever it is going to be. So the next time you catch a pair of eyes in your headlights at the edge of the yard, or hear that rising chorus of howls closer to the house than you would like, take a second look. It is not the coyote from the old field guide. It is a genuinely new animal, assembled in a century, ruling the woods your grandparents thought were empty, and it is one of the only chances any of us will ever get to watch evolution happen in real time, right in the backyard. If this is the kind of thing that keeps your mind turning after dark, subscribe and stay with the channel. And tell me in the comments, have you seen one of these animals where you live? And how big was it really?